Mike, I think by far this is the best one that I've ever been to. And the compliment goes to you guys that you've been willing to get up, try things, be a part of it, be a participant, not just somebody that sits there and absorbs the knowledge through osmosis. And I think that that's awesome. I don't know about you, but I have some kinesthetic awareness about myself, and I think I tend to learn a little bit better when I'm up and moving around. And you guys have done an excellent job with that. And I know all the clinicians really appreciate that. Now, this is going to be maybe a little bit of a charge to get you guys to help me understand if you have some conflict or issues with this. I'm certainly open to that and open for discussion. I'm not here to shove stuff down your throat in this particular lesson. I have about an hour, and I'm going to try to get through as much of this as I can. Certainly be willing to talk and discuss some of this information that I'm going to present to you today. It's a philosophy, all right? And it feeds in to what we did on the mat, exactly what we were doing on the mat. It's a thinking man's game, okay? And so you have to understand, first of all, what our barriers and limitations have been. And I swear I did not pay Mike Clayton to say what he said during that last session, but I was sitting there going, wow, that was an absolute perfect segue to start off with what we're going to talk about today. And the idea, the concept here is you could probably kind of project, this is about teaching athletes to become their own best coach. And I'm going to propose first that we have some problems. We've had a lot of problems with coaching, with attrition in our sport, and I'm going to kind of get into some of that as we go. And hopefully, with the most knowledgeable coaches, the coaches that are coming to these clinics, we can change the culture. Many of you guys are either state coaching directors or connected to the state coaching directorships back home. Maybe you can share some of this when you go back. The first thing that I think that really is important to understand is why kids get involved in sport in the first place. It's because it's fun. Without a doubt, if they're not having fun, they join it because their friends maybe participate. And to me, I think the challenge is how do we keep it fun, be competitive as we go through the different times of involvement from youth club to high school to college on into the international level. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bill Zadek's in the back of the room, our national team's assistant head coach right now. And even when he was competing and as a world champion, the neat thing, I walked into that room this past year and I sensed that those guys in the training camp were having so much fun. They worked their asses off, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to be in that room at that level, laying it on the line in their mid-20s, upper 20s in their age, and competing if it's not fun. There is no way. And so those guys are having fun. How is it that we've got kids that are not having fun? Okay? So we've got to find a way to make that happen, and that's kind of where we're going to go with this. And I know that Mike gave us through some statistics in there, and I got this number off of Human Kinetics, which has been long connected with USA Wrestling in the past years. And this one, it's just unbelievable to me. It says kids join youth sports programs in droves and drop out in droves. 20 million to 30 million 6 to 18-year-olds participate in youth sports programs, but around 80% opt out by the age of 12. So that's even more than what Mike was saying earlier. Now, wrestling certainly isn't changing that model. Okay, I don't have exact numbers on the attrition when it comes to wrestling, but we're not helping that number. I can promise you. One of the toughest things for me as a head coach at a high school is dealing with kids that have been good youth club athletes, but then they come to high school and they either don't want to do it anymore, they're tired of it, it's just not fun anymore. And so that's I think one of our big challenges. Whether you're a youth club coach, a high school coach, college coach, it doesn't matter. We've got to figure this thing out, and we've got to change this model. And here's what I've always thought. You know, you can't change somebody who doesn't understand that there's an issue there. You know, and notice I didn't pick a wrestling coach, doing this. But certainly, this is what we deal with. You guys can change the face, change the picture here. We have this issue in our sport. And so it tends to be a very threatening thing. It tends to be that the coach is driving the ship and he's pushing his agenda a lot of times on these younger kids. And by the time many of us as high school coaches and beyond, we see these kids and they're just frazzled. They're not having fun, and the only reason they're doing it is because they know that somebody wants them to do it. Their parents are pushing them, whatever it might be. So first of all, I think we have to recognize that we have an issue, and the statistics alone bear that there is a hell of an issue here that we've got to really begin to take a look at. And we don't know. We don't know where these kids are going to go. We have no idea. From day one, I've heard people talk about, this kid was this, he was a Tulsa national champion. And again, kind of segueing with what Mike had to say, I'm almost scared to death of those kids when they come in, because I don't know how long they will accept maybe losing 4 or 5 matches their freshman year or not winning a state title, because they've had so much pressure on them. But these young guys, I think the model has to change. It's how we approach those younger kids. I love this. I found this on the internet. It just really grabbed my attention. Reminders from your child. I'm a kid. It's just a game. My coach is a volunteer. The officials are human. No college scholarships will be handed out today. That's out in front of that's actually a sign. It's out in front of some building, on a soccer field. I don't know. Yeah, here it is. A partner soccer club since 1977. So it's like that's the truth. That's where we're at. And to me personally, that's the philosophy that I want to coach under. And that's the philosophy that I want my club to coach under. Coach Hull's with me. Coach Hull, where are you at? Back there in the back. Has a tremendous amount of experience. He'll tell you the truth. We have our problems in Blue Springs High School. We have our issues. I kicked out a youth club about 5 years ago. I went through 3 years of not having a youth club. It was detrimental to my program. That's why Coach Davis here from Park Hill kicks our ass every time we wrestle him for the last 3 years. We haven't even been competitive with those guys. We did not have a kids club program. But you know what? I knew it. I knew this day was coming. I knew for my program. I made a calculated decision. It's not worth it to deal with the headaches that this club was imposing, teaching kids to do things the wrong way. Not necessarily technique-wise, but the loud screaming, the hollering, kids getting to their 8th grade year and choosing not to wrestle anymore. I was done with that. And so I said, you know what? It's a change. I knew that I was cutting my nose off to spite my face, right? But we had to take that calculated chance. It took me 3 years to get another club up and going. Okay? Coach Davis will be better, I promise. Okay? He will. He won't give me any, he won't cut us any slack, but we'll be competitive, After having years and years of success, we had a streak at Blue Springs where for 9 straight years we were in the top 4, brought trophies home from the state tournament, won state titles, runner-ups, all that good stuff. But the truth of the matter is, at the youth level, this groundswell down there, we were having some problems. And tried to get it fixed, talked to the coaches. There was no buy-in. They were doing things their way. So they were asked to leave. And with that, it took some time to get it back going again. Hopefully that day is coming. So when sports are no longer fun, okay, here's pretty much the options. Number 1, kids start making excuses, all right? You can tell. They're going to make excuses for practices and everything. They're going to also resent you as a person. They're going to resent you as a coach, which is probably the opposite of what we want. We want to build trust and confidence, and it's all turning the other way. They're not having fun. Performance in other areas of the sports and other areas of their life drops off, and this including the classroom. And then obviously we're the culprits now. And then ultimately they quit. They're done. I'm not doing this anymore. It's no longer fun. I'm finished. The research is pretty clear that the reason kids get into sports is because it's fun, and they do it because, like the earlier slide showed, they want to be around their friends. And I don't really know how much, that's probably a horrible slide to pick. This kid on top's having fun. Kid on the bottom's probably not having much fun, right? I just really love that slide. I don't know why. But the truth of the matter is, it has to be fun. And so I personally believe when it's coach driven and it's, we're going to get to that here in a minute, that's not happening. Here's something to me, this one obviously caught my eyes. I don't know who this kid is. He's probably a great kid. Maybe he'll become a world champion someday, but the truth of the matter is I doubt it. I doubt it. He's got all these trophies, and obviously I can just see, who do you think's taking that picture? What's your impression of that picture? Dad. Is there any doubt who took that picture? It's probably in front, it's got to be their house, right? And he's got his trophies out. People are driving by, looking out there at this kid in his singlet. He's got his medals on. I mean, the whole thing just, it engulfs everything that is wrong to me about what we're doing. He's got all these medals and all these trophies. I even have a YouTube thing, but we don't have time to go through that today about the problems with this. But it says, essentially coaches who focus on themselves and their own needs instead of their athletes' needs play a bigger role in athlete burnout. And that was a topic in there. And I think it was, where's Kevin at? Randleman. Wasn't you that asked about burnout, right? Or said something about burnout. To me, burnout is oftentimes where expectations are too high and kids don't feel like they can either live up to those expectations or they see no gateway to get there. And so, to me, eventually that's what's going to happen to this kid. He's had all this success at the youth level, and I think the priorities, just in my mind, and maybe this is an unfair observation, but I think that there's been too much emphasis on these trophies, the medals, and everything else here at that age. Now, if we've got, a picture of our Olympians wearing their gold medals and stuff and taking pride in winning the Olympics or a world championship, hell yes. I mean, that is like the pinnacle of what we work for. But is this what we work for? I mean, I got to ask you, is that what we work for, guys? Yes or no? I hope not. I hope this isn't what we are actually working for and what we do. And then the next question is, this is where it gets kind of, I'm going to challenge your thought process on this. All right, so hang in there with me. Don't hate on me on this one, but it says, what do you do as a coach to motivate your wrestlers, okay? Is it what you say? Is it what you do? What do you guys, if I ask you that question, if we were just hanging out tonight downtown in a casual situation, and I ask you, how do you motivate your athletes, what would you tell me? What would your thoughts be on that? You're a coach, you've done good things. How do you motivate your athletes?
We give out like the free ice cream cones at McDonald's, coupons to kids that bust their ass in practice, whether they're good, bad, or whatever.
You're working on that nutrition thing too, right?
Well, of course, we always tell the kids to eat healthy, but you can't do nothing but eat broccoli. That comes back to being fun. Kids like
I get it. I'm having fun. Okay. Hand out all those damn ice cream things you want. The truth of it is, okay, here's where it gets kind of weird. We think as coaches that we're motivating these athletes. We think that we're doing this. Here's what I'm going to ask you. Bottom thing right here. Can we really motivate athletes?
I think so.
Well, we could have like that debate here. Who on this side of the room? Yes, no, yes, no. Can we motivate athletes?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of research, and there's a lot of sports psychologists. There's a lot of psychologists that don't believe that we can motivate athletes. You can't motivate anybody to do anything. You can present a culture that is strong and foster them to motivate and do things that they want to get done. Okay? Now, I know that that's kind of a semantic thing, and it's a twist on words maybe, but it does make us think about that. What are we actually doing, and how are we presenting it? Okay? Here's what I'm going to say. Maybe there's a better way to approach this. Okay? We've got a burnout factor. We think we're doing the right things. We're talking to our kids. We're presenting all these practice plans, and we're pushing our kids to do this and that. I'm going to tell you, like we were on the mat today, and we were talking about getting athletes to think, like when they get up and they present, they turn and face, what are my available options? Okay, what are my options? as opposed to say we're going to go in the room and we're going to do this every day, and maybe we're not getting our athletes to really think, okay? So my goal as a coach, and this is where you have to either kind of at least hear this, whether or not you accept it, I guess, is your take. But I want my athletes to be able to think for themselves. And I want them to be able to be excited and motivated to be a part of our program. Now, there takes a lot of training to get there. Don't get me wrong. And I'm going to get to a couple of the examples on this. Here's another way to say this, though. Coaches and parents are going to commit as a group, okay, and this is the idealistic world, right, that we're going to teach our athletes to begin to think for themselves. We're not going to make all of their decisions for them. They're going to have to be responsible for some of the consequences. If I don't do this, then maybe Johnny pounds me today in the practice room. If so-and-so is coming in early in the morning and they're getting things done and they're getting better and I'm not, then maybe I recognize that. Rather than me demanding that every kid comes in before school at 5 o'clock and works out, I present that opportunity to come in, and if so-and-so is getting better and they feel good about it and they're making that choice to come in, all of a sudden, well, maybe, Coach, can I come in too? Okay? Can I come in too? I'm going to talk to you about training logs in a minute. I don't give out training logs to all of my kids. I give them out to maybe 3 or 4 kids that I know that are going to use them. And then I got other kids that are going, well, Coach, can I get one of those? It's like I kind of throw the bait out there, and I want them to make that choice. I also want them to become an advocate for themselves. I want them to speak up. Like, Coach, I need that. Coach, will you stay with me after today's practice? Will you do that for me? As opposed to, damn, Jimmy, your single is really bad. We're going to need to spend 30 minutes after practice today, okay? Today in practice, when we were doing those drills, I promise you afterwards, just like I had coaches coming up to me to ask me more about some of those situations, Coach, what about when you do this? You'll get the same thing from your athletes. They start to think for themselves. They start to have some ideas of their own. But that has to be fostered from every element of your program. Not just technique, but every part of the program itself. Getting athletes to kind of think for themselves. And there's a parent has a role in this. The parent's role is, number one, just be a good role model. Mom or Dad, you don't have to be the technician in this deal. We need you to be a good role model. And if a good role model means yelling at the official or screaming at my assistant coach or whatever it is, that's not working, okay? The other part of that is you sometimes have to tell them what a good role, what a good activity would be as a parent. What would a good role model look like as a parent? You have to even ask them that question. And I think you'll get the right response from them most of the time, okay? And again, reminding children that sports are for fun, that's your job. Tell them, hey, we're in this for fun. They come home, beat up. I have an athlete, and this is kind of I got to be careful with this one. I have an athlete in my program that came home after a dual meet last year. This particular athlete won the match. Okay? She won the match. Okay, I'll go that far. She won her match against another kid. This athlete is a freshman female who won 20 matches for us last year. 20 matches for us as a freshman girl in our program. She came home after one of the duels, sitting under the water fountain after we get back. I'm getting ready to lock up, getting ready to go home, and I said, so-and-so, what's the deal? I don't know, Coach. I said, you know, sweetheart, you had a great match tonight. You wrestled well. What's going on here? I don't want to go home. And I said, okay, you want to fill me in a little bit? Well, my dad's out in the car, and if I get in that car, I'm going to get ripped for 45 minutes. When I get home, on the way home, I don't want to hear about it. And I said, listen, just try this. You get in the car, tell Dad that you don't feel well, whatever it is, just say you need to get home and get your rest. And I kind of left it at that. Didn't say a whole lot more. I didn't want to dig. So I kind of let her deal with that. She gets in the car, goes home. I locked up. Next day I see her at practice. And I said, so how did it go? I said, did you get 45-minute lecture? She goes, nope, Dad. She goes, nope, Coach. It was an hour and a half. That's after she won. So she deals with this on a daily basis. And you see why I eliminated that particular dad from our club coach? Told him he was no longer welcome. It was that guy. Same guy. Okay? His job isn't to coach her anymore. His job is to tell her that this is for fun, enjoy it, and back off. I've had that conversation over and over again. I can see it's going to be a 4-year battle because he doesn't want to buy in. And that's just the way it is. I do my best. We all can just do our best. Discussions with your child on winning and losing. What is important? I don't think it's a bad thing for parents to talk about winning and losing in general. I think it's bad when they side on this like, hey, winning is this huge priority right now. As in developmental athletes, winning, I promise, is not the ultimate. Losing is not the ultimate. As long as they're putting their shoes on after that last match, win or lose, they put their shoes on again, they're still going. They haven't lost. They're still moving forward. When they finally take those shoes off, then it is over. That's a different game. As far as the coach's role in this model of teaching athletes to become their or your own best coach, right, is to ensure that players have fun, assisting student athletes in setting performance goals. And I love that. I didn't put outcome goals up there. Okay? If you want to work in some outcome-based goals, that's great. But I'm a big believer in performance goals because that way I can build success into every practice and everything that we do. I can compliment them on hustle. I can compliment them on everything, every element. Being on time. Johnny, damn, that was awesome today. You were late yesterday, but man, you're on time today. Good job. You know, whatever it is. Those are the things that ultimately you can build your program around. Those outcome-based goals are deceiving. I don't have control over what guys are in my weight class. I might have the most stacked weight class in the entire state. There might be 5 returning state champions in my weight class. My goal is to become a state champion. I take 6th. Was I a failure that year? God, I hope not. You know, I did my best. I wrestled hard. But in the room, I constantly rewarding those kind of behaviors that I want to reinforce. You know, trying to correct those ones that we can fix. Like today, you know, I told you if it were my practice room, I wouldn't allow guys to sit down. I wouldn't allow guys to come back to the middle and park on their butt. Because that's not what our room's about. That's the culture that you guys have to decide what's important for you. Learn values such as sportsmanship and teamwork. And again, like I told you, this wasn't set up by Mike. This is the way I was seeing it. Obviously, we were seeing some things kind of the same way. That's what the coach's roles are. These are more important than winning state titles. You build a culture in your room where character is important and values are important. Stephen Covey wrote a book on principle-style leadership, right? I mean, these are the things that make a difference in the room and in the world. And if you're a guy that stands strong on principles and values and work hard, those kind of things are going to take care of themselves. You don't have to worry. Though we kind of in the back of our mind, we're excited about the journey to go win a state title. When the state title is won, a championship, that is such a fleeting moment. It lasts for only a few minutes. It's here, it's there, it's gone. But everything that you did in that room to get up to that point, that's worth a lifetime. That's 3-4 months of training. So much goes into that. Our kids, I tell you, I promise you, they value that more than the state championships that we've won. And many of them much more than what they did on an individual basis as well. Character style leadership is huge. If you want character from your kids, then that's how you have to lead. Help teach student athletes to love the game. Oh my God, I love this. I want kids to love it as much as I do. That's one of my major goals as a head coach. I want my athletes to love it. And I tell you, I think it's working because in our program right now, I think we figured out we had 17 wrestlers from Blue Springs wrestling in some college, either NAIA, NCAA Division II, Junior College, Division I. We have 17 guys out there wrestling in college right now. For me, that tells me they love the sport. They're not graduating and going, damn, coach, I hated this. I'm done. So I want to foster that love. And I tell our kids too, to kind of nurse this along, that guys, there's a place for all of you guys out there. There's a place, I don't care whether you're a state champion or you're even a state qualifier. There are programs out there where you can wrestle. Heck, Kansas just started 6 or 7 new wrestling programs last year. They're begging for kids to go across state line and wrestle and help pay for some of their school along the way. In Missouri, we're not quite as fortunate, but we're working on that model too. So I'm telling you, there is a place for those kids. And if they kind of like, hey, I'm not just in it to go to, you know, when it's all done, I'm done forever. Okay, well, maybe I'm not going to wrestle in college, coach. But hey, I know you officiate. What about officiating? Is that a possibility? What do I need to do to be an official? What do I need to do? I'm thinking about going into coaching. Some of our best coaches that have come through our state, at least, are kids that I coached back when I was coaching in college. A lot of those guys now are coaches out there. They weren't the most successful guys out there. Jeff Davis could tell you, Coach Hall, you could tell him, right? Some of our best coaches weren't the best wrestlers. But you know what? They had a passion for the sport. They loved it, and they're sharing that out there. They're character-based people, and they're getting the job done. Teach athletes to learn the basic rules and skills, okay? And I think you have to be able to do that. As a coach, I think yeah, you teach everyththing else, but if you don't have to be a great technician either. As far as what you do, you can always make that adjustment utilizing assistants. And I can't tell you, my assistants are amazing. I've always had good assistants, but you have to allow them to do their job as well. Even if you can do it, if you don't allow your assistants to work, and I've seen models, Coach Hall and I were talking about this, where great assistants in the room, but they weren't allowed to coach. And there's nothing more disheartening to a good coach, a good assistant coach, when they're not allowed to do their job. That's what they want to do. They want to get out there and work out with kids, train kids. If that's their expertise, whatever it is, put them in positions of success. Just like on the mat, whether I mentioned this or not, I meant to. And when you're out there coaching on the mat, continually putting your athletes in positions of success and not failure. If you've got athletes failing in the room, and again, I forget things really quickly now. When I was in college, I know I told a couple of coaches afterwards, but when I was a state champion in high school from a very small school. I go to a college room. I didn't get a takedown for the first freaking month. And you know what? I shot. I never got a takedown. I did everything I did in high school, but it wasn't working. Better athletes, stronger athletes, more mature, better technique, and I was just getting beat up every day in the practice room. So what do you think I started to do? I started to shut down. Yeah, I wasn't shooting anymore. So I became very defensive and reactive, and I know my coach probably didn't want to see that, but I got tired of just getting beat by being put into that position. So it's human nature. When we get beat in something so many times, we tend to stay away from it. You know, Anthony Robbins talks about people move and motivated for 2 reasons. They either move towards pleasure or away from pain. Towards pleasure, away from pain. One or the other. And we all tend to lean, we're either that guy that kind of works more towards pleasure most of the time, or we're that guy that kind of moves away from pain most of the time. Which one's better? If I'm standing at a cliff, and I've got all the pleasure in the world, and I get to the edge of that cliff, and I'm like, I'm pretty happy here. Sometimes that pain and that fear is probably a good motivator, and it's a positive motivator, okay? But the bottom line is this. If we get to a point where we're getting beat with something over and over again, we're not likely to do it very much more. And that was me. And so whether it's in the practice room with your athletes or whether it's with your coaches, utilize your coaches, and we want to be able to teach them basic skills. If it's me doing it, great. But if I've got coaches that are just as competent, or they bought into the system, and maybe it's not perfect, still utilize those coaches in the room to do that. I could do a whole thing on, I think, using your assistant coaches in the room and other ways, and how important I think that is. When we talk about, I think this is kind of what we're getting, where I want to get eventually, is this, guys. And I'll kind of hurry up because I definitely want to leave some room for questions and answers here. When we see a model like this, Here we have the coach and the parent-driven model on the left side, and over on the right side where it's student-athlete-driven, where they're getting to make more decisions for themselves. Over here, athletes are looking for direction and expecting to be told everything to do, wanting to please others. Okay, that's part of that. They're either pleasing the coach or their parent, focused on self instead of the team, because, hey, I've got to get it done. It's me against the world, right? Often reluctant to attend practice, they start getting these negative feelings about being in the room, that they're not getting the freedom to make choice. And over here, it's just the opposite. Self-inspired, wanting to go to practice, wanting to be coached. Have you ever had kids that just don't want to be coached? They don't want to hear what you have to say to them. Anybody have those kind of kids in the room? I've had them, right? Okay. Well, you got to maybe start thinking about why is it that they don't want you to coach them. Athletes wanting to stay after practice rather than not wanting to go at all. Athletes becoming a team player. I had a kid that wrestled for me, 3-time state champ, actually undefeated all 3 of his last years. Went on to win a national title at Wartburg, Division III school, Tyler Hubbard. Every day at practice, he would come to me and he goes, we get towards the end of practice, hey, Coach Hank, we're going for the world championship. Let's go for the worlds today. At first, it was like the state championships until he won that his sophomore year. Then he's talking about worlds and national titles and stuff. So we'd stay after practice. He really wanted to be there. He didn't. It was important to him to stay after. He would call me out, and I love that. Every day he'd come up to me and go, "Pull, Coach Hank." He's like, "Oh, Ty, yeah, I'll be right there." That made me feel good because I knew that he was that athlete that was on this side of the model rather than over me. Hey, Ty, you want to stay and work some today? No, he was seeking me out. That's what it's all about, guys. And then in competitions, I'll kind of rush through this a bit. Kind of the same thing, performing to please parents. Often winning becomes too high of a priority. So if they're not winning, guess what's going to happen? They're going to become discouraged because all the focus is on winning when it's driven over here by the coach or parent. Student athletes develop, and I've read much on this, guys. This is absolutely crazy, but how this really helps destroy self-esteem for later in their life. If they're being told everything to do. And one of the hardest things to do is make that paradigm shift, but it does work. Student athletes typically finding enjoyment rather than drudgery, development of confidence due to personal ownership, and process rather than outcome-based priority. Okay, they're excited to be there. The outcomes, guys, trust me, they will come. They will come. Okay? And then pride taken in all their events and efforts. Okay? Now, this kind of leads me. What is the glue that puts this thing all together? And I'm not here to sell Mike's books, but I love what Mike did. Because I don't even think maybe he realized the bigger picture of what he was doing. When he came out with his book, I have my own books, right? But mine are kind of tailored, made towards whatever I coach. When we go outside the country, I almost always have our athletes, I give them training journals. So they can write on them for that week of training, and then when we get outside of the country, they can write down some of their things that they did over there, so they've got a recorded history of that. And there's several reasons why. Okay, but the training journals to me is actually the glue that puts all of this together, and personal ownership of becoming their own best coach. You can start this at about any age. I would say especially at middle school and up. It can be very simple or they can be complex. I would say, Mike's, yours is pretty complex, right? It's a simple model. It's easy to understand, but there's a lot to it. Yeah. There's a lot to it. Matter of fact, you even said about maybe you might hone it down and make it a little bit thinner book and all of this kind of stuff. You guys, have you ever seen Mike's book? How many of you have seen his book? Okay? You need to seek this out, guys, because it is awesome. It's a training journal for wrestlers. It's a year-round program, right? 365. Mine are built on seasonal things, and I have a template, and I always share with Mike my stuff. So if you guys want it, either he or I can email it to you, and you can take the template that I have, insert your own stuff. I've got some college coaches that are even using it. It's very simple. It takes into account, I can actually pull it up here in a minute and show it kind of to you how it works. Should be used on a daily basis to create a routine. I am huge on routines. Huge on routines. I believe when they come into the room every day, kind of have that routine, whatever it is, get your head on, have headgear ready to go, knee pads, whatever it is, get your jog in, create a routine. When you go to a match, what do you do before practice? What do you do after practice? What do you do on a daily basis? We have something we're very fortunate. We have Wildcat Hour. Our kids can come in during lunchtime. We've got an extra half hour built in there. They can come in, be with me in my classroom, and that's where they fill out their journals. Okay? Not leaving it to risk. I usually don't even let them take them home with them, because if they take them home, I don't know if they're staying up on them. And then, I'll tell you a few other things that go with this. Should define their goals. Obviously, their goals are inside of this, whether it's goals in wrestling, the classroom, anything in their life that they want to be a part of. It could be their academics, obviously, should be used to plan, and it should also be used to self-evaluate. Okay? Now, grab those two things. Okay? Planning and then evaluating. And there's actually a component of that in mind where you can see that, how it works. Okay? And it should be facilitated by coaches. All right. Here's where I made a mistake using journals when I first started. I handed them out to everybody, and then I was just assuming that they were kind of staying up on this. It wasn't working that way. So like I told you, I only handed it out to a rare few in the beginning. I want kids to want to do this. I don't want them to see this as something that's like a drudgery to them. So I only probably handed out to maybe 3, 4, or 5 guys on the team. And then, like every Friday, Coach hasn't done this yet with me, but he will. We'll take one day, usually towards the end of the week, that we sit down with a group of our kids. We kind of break it out with certain kids where we go through them with their journals. And we see what they've been doing, if they have any issues. If they have something that's personal to them that they don't really want us to read, we just tell them to put it in the back of the journal. And that's okay. Because they may have some things in there that are like, hey, I'm not really willing to share that with just anybody. And maybe they don't feel comfortable when they first do this, so they'll put some things in there that they really don't want you to see, and that's okay. But as far as practices and what they're getting out of practices, and then they are actually becoming very accountable for their own things. And that's kind of like what this next thing says. And I have kids that say this to me all the time. Coach, gosh, man, that's a great idea, but I just really don't have time for that. I don't have time to sit down and write things down in my journal. I don't have time to evaluate myself in the evening. Here's what I always tell them. This is my favorite quote of any quotes that I like. This is my all-time favorite. It says, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And that's about planning, and it's about knowing that if you're doing these things as part of your planning activity, you become much more efficient. All right? And I believe that as a coach too. You know, I want to have my axe or my saw sharpened at all times. And if I haven't done that, then shame on me. It's all about preparation and planning, no matter what it is. If you planned well, it gives you so much confidence that when you have to do your thing, you're going to be on top of your game. And it's the same with athletes. Okay? If you've done the homework and you put your plan together, then I would rather do this than spend 2 days trying to chop down that tree with a dull axe. You know, it just doesn't make sense. Few things, just a few more comments on this, and then we'll kind of give it a rest and let you guys ask any questions you might have. Student athlete demonstrates personal accountability and ownership. It's theirs. Okay? They take great pride in that. Their training, their competition, instead of the parent or the coach, it's like, that's where we get back to those other things that we were talking about. Patterns of success and failures can be identified. This is really good. And as a coach, you can start seeing some tendencies. If they're really honest about what they're putting in their journal, you very quickly will start picking up some tendencies. Like, you know, maybe their performance is dragging at the end of the week. Like, it's consistent. After about a month, you see this, like they had good practices at the beginning, but then all of a sudden, they're telling you that on Thursday and Friday, their practices aren't very good. They don't feel like they're up to speed. Then you can start fixing some problems. You can work with them on this. Process is a huge confidence builder, like I said. I kind of jumped the gun on that one, I guess. And I love this. I pulled it out from Zadok earlier when he was coaching yesterday. I couldn't help but add this in. It says, coaching athlete independence. That is a great term. You're coaching athlete independence. You want them to be able to stand up on their own 2 feet. You want them to be an advocate for themselves. You want to create good, strong people, not guys that cower down because they're being yelled at. Go, okay, coach, I'll go here. I'll work real hard for you. I don't want anybody to work hard for me. I don't want them to do that. I'm not in it for that. I'm in it, and I promise you, you'll have the same accolades. They'll come back and they'll love you a lot more. It's just like some of the things Mike was saying today. Coaches, they're gonna come back on you one way or the other. I had a guy call me the other day. I hadn't talked to him forever. I emailed him a couple times, but I hadn't talked to him forever. And that was Mark Burrell, that kid that was a 2-time national champ for me at Central Missouri. But he moved away, went to Iowa, became a business success in Des Moines, did some great things up there, became Small Businessman of the Year in Des Moines, Iowa. Left, went back, went to Florida, lived down there for a while, and he moved and then went back to Florida, and he called me the other day. And it was just picking up where we never really left off. It was really cool. He said, Coach Hag, he goes, I never really told you this, but I want to thank you for everything. He goes, you brought an environment into our practices in our room that we were always kind of the underdog. We wanted to work hard, but we were a family, and nobody could penetrate that. Nobody could get through that. And that was a culture in our practice room. And to me, that was the biggest compliment that I probably ever heard from an athlete, that he felt like 30 years ago, well, not quite 30, 25 years ago, we were doing that. And now it's paid great dividends to him and his life. He goes, that was the greatest lesson that I ever learned, was the fact that I learned to stand on my 2 feet. I had brothers in the room. And I wasn't even thinking in a real cognitive way about this, about teaching athletes to become their own best coach. It's just kind of always what I did. But then when I started to think about it, I just think it's a lot better model. And I think that one of the things, like I said, we've got athletes wanting to go on, to go a higher level. And when you've got that other crap going on where kids are being driven into the ground, they don't want to go on. They want to quit. They want to give it up. I saw this and Model for Becoming. This is something that USA, have you ever seen this before? USA Wrestling published this many, many years ago. Anybody else seen this? Okay, Coach, you've seen it. And in it, it's got a packet with all some of our greatest athletes and coaches. John Smith's in there. Everybody's got a page. And I think Rulon's in there and some others. Bill, you've seen that, right? Okay. To me, that is awesome. Because if you go through those 10 things, it is about athletes accepting responsibility pretty much on their own. And the coach is there to facilitate. See yourself as a facilitator. You're going to do everything you can to help athletes do these things. Make a commitment. I want to help athletes make a commitment. I want to help them do that. I can't force them to make a commitment, but I can sure help them, guide them, teach them to do those things. I can help them set goals. I can help them plan out their yearly plan. Okay, I can do those things. I can also help them get on the mat. I'm going to be there at 5. If you want to be there, dude, I will be there at 5. I promise you that. I'll be there after school. I'll stay after. Tyler, I'll work with you. I'll be your dummy for the world championship. No time to waste. That is definitely the athlete thinking, right? Build yourself, weight room, technique-wise, and I remember the pages that are behind this. Seek out the best. Find those guys. As an athlete, this is what they're telling the athlete. They're not telling the coach this. This is about telling the athlete. Seek out the best. Who do you think what's that mean? Seek out the coaches. Seek out the role models. Seek out the people that are going to help you get to your goals. Take the initiative. Represent yourself. We just said that, right? Compete with intensity. Those are the 10 things, 10 steps to greatness. I couldn't have ever thought of anything better than that to say to you guys. I saw that again, and it's like totally reflective of what we're trying to do here. And I think that's it, okay?